Welcome to the Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Show. You can go to theathletic.com/NBA Show and get The Athletic for a discounted rate. It's a great time. We are less than a month away from the NBA trade deadline. You can go check out a piece that I helped contribute to with our guy Eric Kareen about Pascal Siakam trades. Lots and lots of fake Pascal Siakam trades on that piece. And you get to hear both sides from the Raptors side, from the Thunder side, from the Mavs side, from the Pacer side, all of it. It's very good. You should go check it out. Theathletics.com/NBA show. With me, as always, is my good friend Alex Spears. Alex, tell me what happened in the NBA this week.
Well, Andrew, it all started last Friday night where the new look OG Knicks went to Philly and continued their post-trade hot streak, dominating the Sixers 128-92 and outscoring Philly 35-16 in the fourth quarter. It was the Knicks' third straight win, a streak that would reach 5 before the Knicks finally fell to the Mavericks on Thursday night. Since the new year, the Knicks are 5-1 with the 6th-ranked offense and 2nd-ranked defense per Cleaning the Glass. On Saturday, it's another Sixers game, and unfortunately for them, another game where I'll be talking about how good the other team is. The Utah Jazz, led by Lauri Markkanen's 33 points, beat the Sixers in Philly 120-109. The Jazz, as I will discuss in a few minutes, have been on a tear over the last month, going 12-4 and moving to within a half game of the play-in. As for the Sixers, it's been a rough patch. They are 1-4 in their last 5. And Joel Embiid has been out of the lineup for a couple games now with the knee thing. As a reminder, the MVP must play 65 games this season, meaning that any MVP candidate can only miss 17 games max. Embiid, through 36 games so far, has already missed 9. Now, do you remember Cavs week a few weeks ago where the Wheel of Fandom landing on the Cavs immediately resulted in the Cavs announcing 2 of their starters would be out for extended time? Things seemed bleak.
Squawk.
But these Cavs just keep chugging away. On Sunday, the Cavs, led by Jarrett Allen's 29-16, beat Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs 117-115, holding on after an 11-0 Spurs run to end the game. Since losing both Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, the Cavs are a very impressive 9-3. And because of the game in Paris this week, which they also won, they don't play again until Monday. The Cavs are 22-15, 5th in the East, with Darius Garland likely coming back very, very soon. On Monday, the Clippers continued their winning ways, beating the Suns 131-122 in Phoenix. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard combined to score 63, while the Suns were once again without one of their big 3, this time Kevin Durant. The Clippers are 16-3 in their last 19 games and are now only a game back of the Nuggets for 3rd in the West. And in other Clippers news this week, it was announced that Kawhi Leonard agreed to a 3-year, $152 million extension, which will keep Kawhi in LA through the 26-27 season. On Tuesday, the new look Raptors, starting Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, and Thang, by the way, traveled to LA to face off against the Lakers. The final margin in the game was only one, a 132-131 victory for the Lakers. But as we would learn in a post-game rant from Raptors coach Darko Rajakovic, perhaps the most important margin was that margin that happened at the free throw line, where the Lakers shot 23 free throws to the Raptors 2 in the fourth quarter. Rajakovic was fined $25,000 for his comments, and the Raptors dropped to 15-23, currently out of the plan. While Coach Darko and the Raps did not get the much-needed win, hopefully they can take solace in the fact that the Lakers are not good. The Lakers are 4-10 in their last 14 games, with a Saturday game coming up against the red-hot Jazz. If the Jazz win that game, which is in Utah, the Jazz would move into the play-in, pushing the Lakers completely out of the playoff picture.
Unreal.
On Wednesday, it was a matchup between the 2 best teams in the league, the Boston Celtics and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And similar to their first matchup this season, it was another overtime thriller. After missing an off-balance mid-range shot to win it in regulation, Jason Tatum would score 12 of his 45 points in overtime, helping the Celtics get the 127-120 win. The Celtics are now 18-0 at home. And if you're wondering, no team in NBA history has ever gone undefeated at home. The closest we've gotten was the 15-16 Spurs and the 85-86 Celtics, who both went 40-1. Now, for the Timberwolves, they were so close to to breaking a really long losing streak in Boston, which goes all the way back to 2007, which was the last time they won there, a game in which Ricky Davis scored a team-high 28 points for the Wolves in the win. Now, Celtics announcer Brian Scalabrine also played in that game. Listen to this line. 37 minutes, 0 of 1 from the field, 0 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 fouls.
0 of 1 is
0
like
of 1 in 37 minutes.
Unbelievable.
Finally, on Thursday, we had some blowouts. The Thunder beat the Blazers 139-77 in OKC. The 77 points for the Blazers, that's the fewest points scored in the NBA this season and last season, actually. It was also the largest margin of victory in Thunder franchise history. The game everyone was watching, however, was Celtics-Bucks, a matchup of the two top teams in the East. Unfortunately, that game was also not that dissimilar from the Thunder game, with the Bucks cruising the entire time, winning 135-102 in a game that was never really close. Now, were the Celtics on the second night of a back-to-back? Yes. You know who else was? The Timberwolves the night before when they had to play Boston and took them to overtime, okay?
Sure.
And finally, I didn't talk about them yet, but it's worth mentioning that this past week was a particularly low point for the Golden State Warriors. You had the Shams report about Jonathan Kuminga losing faith in Steve Kerr after last Friday night's loss. You had 2 blowout losses, one to Toronto and one to New Orleans. You had Steph suggesting that keeping this team together the rest of the season would be the definition of insanity. You had the host of the Draymond Green Show nearing his return and releasing an episode of his podcast where he revealed that being a giant ass on the court over and over was getting too much for him, and Adam Silver had to talk him out of retirement. Listen, it's been a bad week for the Warriors, and if you have any Warriors fans in your life, friends or family, please check in with them this weekend and let them know that you are enjoying every single second of this and that you can't wait to see what the second of the 2 timelines looks like, since this first one is so clearly over. What a week it was, Andrew.
What a week indeed, Al. Scoring is up around the league, and so I decided I'd come up with 5 scoring stats for this season. Stat number 1, the Thunder lead the league in drives at 61.8. I'm sure you've heard that a ton. But since the NBA started tracking drives per game in the 13-14 season, the Thunder are the only franchise to have 60 or more drives. They've done it 3 times. In fact, the first year they started tracking drives per game in 13-14, the most drives for any team was the Philadelphia 76ers at 42.6 per game. The Thunder are 20 more drives per game than that team. Pretty wild. And it's
You think they're getting loosey-goosey with their definition? Or you think they're actually driving?
I think the league is changing, and I have another stat that shows how much the league has changed since that particular season. But that's for later. Stat number 2, Kevin Durant. He's been pretty good with the Suns, but did you know he's only shooting 42% in the mid-range this season? Last season, he was a mid-range killer. He shot 56% last season from the mid-range. He's only 0.92, and he's also only 0.92 points per possession in isolation. Like one of the worst heavy ISO guys in the league. That's like the worst points per possession among any ISO player taking 3 or more shots per game. Kevin Durant. So is there a decline? Is it a fit issue? What is it? There's something going on with Durant. So just I'm not saying this is definitive for Durant, but I'm putting a pin in Kevin Durant right now because it's not looking very good. Al, I'm going to give you the best and worst players in transition, 4 or more possessions per game. So the best guys in transition, starting with Donovan Mitchell, who is in 5.5 transition possessions, that's hard to say. Transition possessions every game, 1.34 points per possession, shooting a 67% effective field goal, which is just outrageous. Second, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in 6 possessions per game, 1.32 points per possession, 65% effective field goal in transition, crushing it. And then RJ Barrett, 1.31 points per possession in transition, 65% effective field goal. All those guys are just almost automatic in transition. Now, 3 guys who aren't so automatic in transition. Tyler Hero in 4 transition possessions, 0.94 points per possession, 46% effective field goal in transition. Really bad. Number 2, Terry Rozier, 4.5 possessions, 0.98 points per possession, only 51% effective field goal. Now, both of those, they're chuckers. They're probably taking a lot of pull-up jumpers in transition. Those are understandable. This one surprised me the most. Scotty Barnes, in 4 transition possessions every game, 0.99 points per possession. He's only shooting 56% effective field goal in the league. It's one of the worst players in transition, taking 4 or more per game. I thought that was kind of unusual to me. That was not a name that I expected.
Well, maybe RJ will rub off on him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me like who's a better transition player, RJ Barrett or Scotty Barnes?
Oh yeah, I would not be guessing RJ Barrett.
It is like by far RJ Barrett. I thought that was really interesting. Pull-up shooters. How about some pull-up shooting? Some of the best pull-up shooters in the league. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not a shock. In 9 pull-up shots per game, shooting 48%. He's shooting better on pull-up shots than Tyler Hero is in transition, which is wild. CJ McCollum, a classic pull-up game. Still amazing this season. 48% as well on 6 pull-ups per game. And then Chris Middleton, another classic. 5 attempts per game, 47%. Still really good.
Now CJ I was going to say real quick, CJ is low-key having like an awesome season.
Yeah.
He's shooting 45% from 3 this season on 8 attempts per game. Like all of his efficiency is up. He's basically putting up the same counting stats as last season, but he's playing slightly fewer minutes, but way more efficient in his 32 age season.
Yeah.
Shout out CJ.
And very efficient in the pull-ups. 3 guys who are really bad in pull-ups this season that are taking a lot. You have to take 5 or more. A couple goobers in here that you you're like okay, these guys make sense. Jordan Poole, 33% on 5.8 pull-ups per game.
Yeah.
Jalen Green, 32% on 5.9 attempts. Like, okay,
sure.
There's a player that's worse though, and this is the worst in pull-up shots, and he's taking 8 per game. Any guesses as to who the worst is on like volume pull-up shots?
I do have a name in my head, but I don't even want to say it. I don't. I'm going to write it down.
Like, if I didn't already say Jordan Poole, I think Jordan Poole would be the one that people would be thinking about.
Yeah. Okay, I've written it down. Okay. If you say the name, I will show you the name. Okay, what is the name?
It's Tyrese Maxey.
Okay, well, that was not what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. You know what? I knew that because I was just listening to the You Know Ball podcast, and Trillbro Dude was talking about this. Yeah. How he's been so good everywhere else.
Everywhere else.
His pull-up game has been really bad.
It's not only really bad, it's the worst in the NBA on high volume. The worst. 31%. Yeah, that's the worst in the league at high volume. Okay, my last offensive scoring stat. We all know the post game is dead, but how dead is it really? This season, Nikola Jokic has the most post-ups per game at 6.8 post-ups. Embiid has 5 per game. Anthony Davis has 4. Everybody else in the league is 3 or less. NBA.com/stats tracking data goes back to the 13-14 season, as I mentioned earlier. The most that season, and remember, this season, the most is 6.8. The most that season, Al Jefferson at 19.8 post-ups per game. This was only a decade ago, and the league has changed this much. In fact, Taj Gibson, that season in 13-14, had as many post-ups as Nikola Jokic does this season at 6.8. Exactly the same. The post-up is officially dead. It's dead, Al. Most guys you would think are like, oh, like Alperen Şengün, dominant in the post. He's taking 3 per game. The post-up is dead. It's gone. Eliminated.
Man, I did love Al Jefferson.
20 post-ups per game.
That's so awesome.
Which is it probably will never happen again because people are like, oh yeah, the big man's back. Look at all these like great bigs, winning MVPs, all this. They don't post up. They just don't do it. Embiid 5 per game. 5.
The things I always remember about Al Jefferson where randomly that random year he had in Charlotte when he was really, really good.
Yeah.
Like kind of, I think he was around 30 by that time. And then also his giant bed. Do you remember his giant bed that he bought?
Yeah.
It was so long. Two favorite things about Al Jefferson.
Giant guy, giant bed.
Okay. Were those all your stats, Andrew?
That's all I got.
All right. Listen, a lot can change in a month. On December 12th, 1 month ago, the Nets, who are currently 16-22, were an above 500 team. The Lakers, who are currently teetering at the 10th spot, were the 6th seed with 3 more wins than the team in 7th.
Wow.
The Pistons had 1 fewer win than they currently do. And the Jazz, the Utah Jazz, were 7-16. At that time, Cleaning the Glass had the Jazz as the 26th best offense and 27th best defense.
Wow.
A negative 8.8 net rating.
Wow.
And based on their play to that point, Cleaning the Glass expected them to win around 19 games over an 82-game season. 1 month later, the Utah Jazz are 19-20, a half game behind. Well, actually, they're actually kind of tied with the Lakers now. I wrote this like 2 nights ago, but now after the Lakers lost, as I mentioned, that game on Saturday is going to decide who's in the 10th spot. They're a full game up on the Warriors. Like, what happened to this team? Well, over the last month, the Jazz have gone 12-4. They are 13th in offense, 12th in defense over that time span.
4 is wild, man. 12-4 is crazy.
So it is. Those 12 wins are tied with the Boston Celtics for most wins over the past month. And if for some reason 12-4 doesn't sound that impressive, I looked at last season just for context. Only 11 of the 30 teams had a 16-game stretch as good as what the Jazz have done over the last month. This Jazz team has gone from being a true cellar dweller, hanging out there, down there with the likes of the Zards and the Hornets and the Spurs and the Pistons, to having one of the best months of basketball a team has had so far this season. And if you're wondering whether the schedule god showed them favor over the last month, no, they didn't. Just in the last week, they beat Philly on the road, Milwaukee on the road, and Denver at home. There's 12 wins, also included wins against Dallas, Miami, and New York. Their 4 losses were at Sacramento, at Cleveland, at New Orleans, and at Boston. That's it. Ooh. 4 road losses to playoff teams.
Wow.
And if you're still trying to poke holes in this, wondering, well, maybe they got some shooting luck. No, it was the opposite. Over the last month, Jazz opponents shot 37.9% from 3, which was the 11th highest percentage in the league. And they shot 45.3% from the corners, which was the 6th highest percentage in the league. If anything, the Jazz were a little unlucky shooting the ball. They only hit 35.9% of their own corner threes, which was the 5th worst percentage over that month time span. This team has just been really good. Now, why have they been good? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The obvious one is health. In those first 26 games, Markkanen and Kessler missed a combined 15 games. And importantly, they missed those games during different stretches, which means the Jazz weren't really able to settle into any kind of normal rotation. Now, with everyone healthy, the Jazz have finally been able to get into a rhythm with their rotations. And interestingly, what they found works is much different than what they thought would work entering the season. The starting lineup on opening night was Talen Horton-Tucker, Walker Kessler, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, and Lauri Markkanen. That lineup ended up playing 174 possessions together. They were a minus 21.4 net rating in those possessions.
Oh, no.
Oh, no is right. Fast forward to today, the Jazz are rolling out Chris Dunn, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Simone Fontecchio. I always have to pause. I really am trying to get that right. I even wrote it out phonetically for myself.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
It is. And John Collins. In 182 possessions, that new starting lineup has a plus 2.1 net rating per Cleaning the Glass. Now, that isn't some overwhelming number, but when your previous starters, who are a minus 21.4, it's pretty good. And that lineup has been putting up those improved numbers over this recent stretch, which, again, included games against Boston, Milwaukee, and Denver. Andy Larson wrote a great article in the Salt Lake Tribune detailing why this starting lineup, which, by the way, is the 16th different one for the Jazz this season, has finally led them to a place that makes sense. Chris Dunn in the role of the distributor, Sexton as the off-ball scorer who has more space because of Fontecchio and Collins being there, and then Markkanen, of course, as the lead guy who, in addition to his always efficient scoring, is currently at career-high levels with offensive rebound percentage and block percentage. That new starting lineup has allowed the all-bench unit to make more sense as well. Rookie Keontae George, Jordan Clarkson, Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk, and Walker Kessler are a plus 22 net rating in 90 possessions, only 90 possessions, so far per Cleaning the Glass. And one thing Andy brought up in his article was how Coach Will Hardy has talked about using Kessler differently in terms of spacing, starting him closer to the three-point line instead of near the paint. And Jackson Frank on Twitter clipped a play from that Nuggets game showing how this works. It was a play where Kessler starts just inside the three-point line in the corner, and while the movement of all the other four Jazz players keeps the Nuggets occupied, Kessler eventually cuts to the rim where he catches an easy lob from Markkanen for the dunk. I know one thing I have been guilty of is thinking that good spacing is just too difficult with a non-shooting big in the current NBA, which is just wrong. It can be difficult, but it's also not impossible either. And Will Hardy deserves a lot of credit for constructing this offense in a way where all these random pieces are being optimized, because I can't really say that I just love this Jazz roster, Andrew. I'm not blown away when I read this list of names to myself. And so part of me does wonder, as good as this month has been, how much further up the standings can they really go? But that's where it starts to get interesting, because while everyone has been focused on the Jazz as sellers at this deadline, talking about Markkanen or John Collins or Kelly Olynyk, why wouldn't they be buyers? This is the same team that engaged with the Blazers about Damian Lillard, the same team that was trying to get involved in the Drew Holiday sweepstakes, the team that made the John Collins trade, and the team who, if the Thunder didn't exist, we'd be talking about how much trade ammo they have. At least 15 total first-round picks, including their own, 5 that are completely unprotected. They got lightly protected ones. They got swaps. They have movable contracts. Why wouldn't the Jazz be buyers? And that should terrify these old-ass teams at the bottom of the play-in range. Because a month ago, the Warriors, Lakers, and Suns thought they'd really only need to fend off one other team to at least make the play-in, when it looked like all of San Antonio, Portland, Memphis, and Utah wouldn't be competitive. Well, now Utah, even without some big deadline deal, is going to be a huge problem. This team, assuming decent health, is going to make the play-in. Official Slam and Jam prediction, Andrew.
Whoa.
I don't think they're world beaters by any means. And I'd love to see them make some kind of upgrade at the deadline. But after a turbulent start to the season, they have now been in a solid groove for a month, which is so much more that you can say about these other goofy old teams around them. So, yeah, I've kind of been waiting, but we are now at the month point. Like, they've been doing this for a month now, 12-4. So I feel like I have to start to change my priors, which, granted, I think it was deserved after you start off the season 7-19, but they followed that up with this 12-4 month, beating some really good teams. Now with everyone healthy, I think I'm starting to buy the Jazz. I'm buying in.
So, official Slam and Jam prediction. Who's out then? If the Jazz are in, who's
You're asking
out?
me to make a second prediction, Andrew. I only do one prediction
it's attached
per show.
It's attached to the first one.
Andrew, it's none of my business, okay? Whoever wants to drop out, that's their call, okay?
So,
I mean,
like,
it could be
2 of Phoenix, Houston, Lakers, Jazz, Warriors are going to miss.
Correct.
2.
Yes, 2 of them.
Because I think like Dallas is good enough. Pelicans have been good enough. Everybody else is good enough. But like 2 of those teams, 2 of Dallas, or not Dallas, Phoenix, Houston, LA, Utah, Golden State.
Warriors,
that's pretty wild. Like those are, I mean, obviously,
it is, and
Utah didn't make it. I don't think their fan base would be like outrageously disappointed. If any of those other missed, it would be like such a big disappointment for any of those fan bases.
Well, and I know what some people will say is, well, if they're around the play-in by the end of the season, as a reminder, their pick is going to OKC, but it's top 10 protected. So wouldn't they kind of do a, Dallas Mavs move from last year where they try to make sure they're in the 10 spot? But you and I have talked about, like, if you're the Jazz, wouldn't you rather that pick convey this year in what everyone is seeing as a down draft and then getting your own pick next year in the 25 draft? Now, they expect to be better than the 10th pick next year, but it makes it easier. Like, you don't have to worry as much. Like, you can have it either way. You're going to having your first round pick in a much better draft. So
Yeah.
I don't really buy that as much. I did at the beginning of the season, but now I'm at the point where I think the Jazz are just going to continue to play well and might even be buyers, as they kind of suggested in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, they could go get one of those net swings.
They
You know,
could.
to
They get a lot of things.
fortify their team. They really could. Another team that might look to maybe upgrade a little bit at the deadline is the Indiana Pacers, and we'll talk about them right after this break.
All right, Andrew, it is time for the Wheel of Fandom, our weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. Last week, the wheel landed on the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers were on a 5-game winning streak at the time and continued their good play this week, going 3-1 with wins over Atlanta, Boston, and Washington. The only downside to the week, which was a pretty big one, is that Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton had to leave in the first half of the win against Boston after doing an awkward splits. Halliburton would be diagnosed with a grade 1 hamstring strain and is expected to be out at least the next 2 weeks. Pacers are 22-15, fourth in the East, with the number 1 offense and 27th ranked defense per Cleaning the Glass. Andrew, if the Pacers are our favorite team, who is our guest?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. We get to learn from Caitlin Cooper today. She writes about the Pacers on the Basketball She Wrote blog that's available on patreon.com. Caitlin, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back, guys. It's been a while, but I'm excited to talk about Pacers with you again.
Yeah. So the big story is obviously Indiana losing Tyrese Halliburton. This week, Halliburton creates so much for the Pacers offense, both as a scorer and as a passer. Despite losing him, however, the Pacers were able to quickly regroup and beat Boston, and then they won their most recent game against Washington. How are the Pacers able to successfully adjust so quickly after losing a player who's so essential to everything they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting because time's a flat circle, right? Because at this time last December, the Pacers made a starting lineup change, and they ended up rattling off 8 wins out of 10, and then Tyrese got hurt. And then after that, they went 1 of 9 over the next 10 with him being injured, and they just never regained that same magic even after he came back. So now they make a starting lineup change. They go 8-1. He gets injured, and this time they're doing a lot better at regrouping on it. Just like you said, the second half coming out against Boston, I think a big key to it is they're very deep at the point guard position, despite how good and fantastic Tyrese has been as literally almost an MVP candidate. So TJ McConnell was a big part of what they did in that second half, particularly because Boston likes to try a lot of weird things on defense, and it's fascinating, like particularly this week, everything that they do differently with Drew Holiday, whether that's morphing in and out of man and zone, whether that was being really aggressive, weakening Tyrese Halliburton. Their pick and roll coverages were very good. Against TJ, they actually tried to put Kristaps Porzingis and Luke Kornet as his primary matchup and just sag off and play clear into the paint, despite the fact that he was the only ball handler on the floor. And he really took advantage of that, and their transition defense struggled. So that's where the Pacers are really going to thrive. And if we're being honest, it also helped that Jason Tatum wasn't playing. He played pretty well against them in the prior matchup, so that was a help. And it also helped that they were playing the Washington Wizards in the next game. So we'll see how they fare here coming out, going on this extended road trip without Tyrese. But I do think that they're a little bit better equipped than they were last year to handle it. And they've talked about the fact that, it's going to have to look differently without Tyrese as well. I mean, you could tell right off the bat against Washington that Rick Carlisle has really relaxed how much play calling he does when Tyrese is at the helm. He was calling a lot of plays without Tyrese at the helm. They're having to focus a little bit more on defense. So their play style, I don't think, is going to be quite the same.
So one of the stories this season with the Pacers has been their defense, or lack thereof. However, in their last 9 games, where Indiana has gone 8-1, the Pacers have held teams to 114.8 points per 100 possessions, which is 10th in the league during that span per Cleaning the Glass. And if any listener out there thinks, they must have played an easy schedule, 6 of those 9 games were against Milwaukee, Boston, Atlanta, and New York, all teams with a top 8 offense. How much of this recent defensive improvement is real versus a mirage?
I think it's a combination of both. When they made the change to the starting lineup the day after Christmas and ended up going back to what they went away from last year, which is putting Jalen Smith back at the 4, and part, I think that was motivated for a number of reasons, and that they had given up like 150 points to the Clippers, and James Harden was doing snow angels on the sideline, and they knew that they needed to put an emphasis on defense. So by doing that, it allows Aaron Nesmith to play at the 3, which is his more natural defensive position. He's not giving up as much size. Also, like, individual defensive rating is, it's not an individual stat, but the only starter for the Pacers who had a negative swing net rating was Obi Toppin. So they made an adjustment there. And then also all 3 centers have been playing pretty well for them. So it allows them to keep playing all 3 of them to an extent. But it was also, they wanted to make clear that, look, like, the guys are going to play who are making a commitment on defense. So I think that on the one hand, you can tell from an execution standpoint that some of it is better. Like, just for an example, the Pacers started the year, they did not double team mismatches at all. Like, that's why they limit so many 3-point attempts. They stay home. They do not have very many closeouts. Like, if you look at Second Spectrum, they're one of the lowest teams in terms of closeouts because they're staying and trying to limit 3-point attempts. Then they kind of found out, like, look, we have no size. We can't do that. So they play a game against the Raptors. They're very proactive doubling Pascal Siakam, but their rotations out of those double teams were abhorrent, like really, really bad, knowing that they want to be in shift position, rotating from the next nearest defender and then keeping those rotations in front. You could tell they were a team that didn't do it. And now when you watch them do it, they're more connected. You could tell that they're more on a string and know where rotations need to be. That being said, when you say how much of it is real, overall, opponents haven't shot terribly against them from three on the whole, but they've caught a lot of opponents in this stretch on very bad nights. So you'll see that like Houston made 5 threes. That's not something that you're really controlling. You can control the location and the volume of 3-point attempts. You can't really control the percentage. And then I would also say that there's just yes, this is a tougher schedule, but the opponents they were losing to during the 1-7 stretch were very uniquely positioned to give the Pacers problems. A team like Orlando, a team like Minnesota, they don't have guys who can guard Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards and handle Paolo Banchero. So those matchups are something that I think that aspect's going to continue to linger. The fact that they don't have players who can guard big wings is a lingering issue, and probably why the Pacers are getting mentioned with basically every big wing that's out on the market.
Right.
Yeah. So back to the offense. Haliburton has become one of the most dominant offensive players in the NBA. Thinking ahead to the playoffs, what kind of defensive strategies have been most successful against Tyrese so far this season? And are there any teams, personnel or schemes that are particularly suited to slow him down?
Chicago in the fourth quarter earlier this season had quite a bit of success just having Alex Caruso face guard him and be physical so that they were having to run offense more so through Bruce Brown. Similarly, Orlando in the first game when the Pacers had the really lopsided loss and had their worst half-court offensive rating in the first half of that game, Jalen Suggs was very physical with him because one of the things they'll do when it's, TJ, Andrew Nembhard, Bruce Brown running offense is they'll use Tyrese as like the stack screener, have him get loose out to the wing and then make plays from there. And they were preventing him from even being able to set those screens. And then it was forcing the Pacers to have to get into next actions. But I would say that Boston, honestly, this week as a whole was probably the best that I've seen. He was 5 of 17. The book on Tyrese is to weak him to his left. And some teams aren't as successful with that because he is still very good at stopping and popping and automatically shooting going to his left. But if you're able to stay on his hip and funnel him into the mid-range, he takes floaters with his right. So it's going to be an automatic, contest right to his right hand. Derek White was very good at that. And then just mixing up however many different coverages that they were using. I mean, it was very telling of the Pacers and some of the holes that they still have in terms of what they need to be a contender, and that Drew Holiday in the second half was guarding Tyrese Haliburton on the logo and face guarding him and not even looking at the fact that Ben was having a screen set from Isaiah Jackson. Like, clear out on the logo, just standing there staring at him. So, yeah. So I would say that Boston as a group was the best that I've seen somebody do so far.
Kind of related that I was reading your post about the different ways they're trying to hide Tyrese Haliburton on defense, specifically against Boston, who came out in that first quarter of the first game and were just targeting Haliburton almost every play. And I think you said that Indiana scored 20 points in that quarter. Haliburton was 0 for 4. Do you think that might be a viable way of just like slowing him down by putting him in so many actions defensively that you just try to wear him out?
Yeah, and that was the flip side of the coin. I mean, Jaylen Brown even touched on that and admitted that that was our strategy, was to put him in as many actions early so that, what he does in transition, maybe he doesn't have the same energy stores to be able to do that. So the Pacers did try to make a number of adjustments. One thing that they did is they've had him use show and recover a lot more this year than you would have seen last year, so they're not giving up that switch. The problem, though, there is like Aaron Nesmith fights tooth and nail. Like, that guy would run through a brick wall through his teammates, but if he's still staying on Jason Tatum, like, Jason Tatum can still shoot over the top of him. So, and then Boston was like, well, if you're going to show and recover, then we're just going to slip the guard screens, at which point the Pacers have been more active where like the guy guarding the corner will then do a kick out switch. They will take that guy slipping and then Tyrese will peel off and go to the corner, which is pretty effective for him because he really does play passing lanes quite well. He has a good size for position. He's pretty good at anticipating that. So that was helpful, but we'll see if they continue to do that, how teams adjust and counter for it, because the only team I've seen them do that against so far is Boston, really, because they've eliminated some of the peel switching from their defense that they did last year.
So your most recent post on Basketball She Wrote was about the go-ahead shot Benedict Mathurin took at the end of the second Celtics game, which led to free throws and the win, a shot that no Pacer had taken out of that action before that moment. Now, Mathurin, he exploded onto the scene as a rookie. He posted some huge lines, but he struggled with efficiency as the season went on, especially from three. This season, he's playing slightly less minutes, but has improved his efficiency across the board, though he's not getting to the line nearly at the rate he was last season. Where have you seen the biggest improvements in his game, and what do you see as the most important next step for him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I've said early on from the beginning of the year that I don't think it's completely been reflected in the numbers, but I compare him to, like, if you imagine a trapeze artist letting go of the swing that they're currently on, but yet they haven't quite reached for the second one. I think overall he is a better player than last year, but he's kind of in liminal space, and I don't know when exactly it's going to be that he's going to fully latch on to the next step of where he needs to go. He's kind of in that in between, but like when they were at Summer League, it was very much like his processing of the game and ability to find kick out avenues was limiting him because he really wants to play out a triple threat. And that's something that, like, it's a good thing. He's very good at it. He's very good at making reads and using like a shimmy jab and knowing how much he needs to do to create separation and get to the rim. And that's why Rick Carlisle kind of mentioned like that shot that he got against Boston. He's the only guy on our roster who could have even gotten that shot off. But there's times where he'll be open and he doesn't realize like it's a short closeout and he doesn't just naturally shoot the inflow shots that are coming to him. So the threes are following at a better clip, but I think he could even be taking a few more attempts in some of those situations just so that he's drawing longer closeouts because he is so good at driving downhill and drawing contact, and the free throw attempts have gone up for him. I think a big part of it for him in terms of inflection points is that they just need him to be able to compete on defense more consistently. And there have been some solid performances for him, like what he's played terrifically against Milwaukee and pretty much most of those matchups and had some really big plays against Giannis down the stretch in the first one they got over him. But then there'll also be moments where, like, yeah, they scored 150 points on the Hawks, but there's 3 possessions in a row where he's given up a screen rejecting to DeJounte Murray, and then DeJounte Murray's getting to the rim where they need more from him there. And I think that he is capable of doing it. He has the tools physically to do it. It's just that everything with Ben typically is about feel and processing. And that's where, like, you can see that his visual awareness is starting to get broader, that he's seeing more passing angles, especially on drives, than what he would have seen last year. And they need that same thing to start opening up for him on defense as well. Because if he's going to play out there with Tyrese Haliburton, the numbers with Tyrese and Ben are not good. I think that's in part why they went ahead and moved him back to the bench. I think some of that was, second year slump and having to figure out the different ways that teams were guarding him, but also like the numbers between Tyrese and Buddy are better. The numbers between Tyrese and Andrew are better because Andrew's probably the most complete defender on the team, and Buddy just has a degree of gravity that no one else on the roster has. So it's going to have to be Ben knocking down inflow shots that come to him and continue to be making strides as a defender.
So, Caitlin, I was a big Jarace Walker guy going into this past draft. I know you did a lot of pre-draft work on Walker, and the Pacers drafted him 8th overall. But through 37 games, he's only played 100 minutes total across 12 games. How did you envision Walker's fit on the Pacers going into the draft? And with reports that the Pacers are, quote, very determined not to trade Walker, how important do you think it is that he could potentially be? How important could he be in this next era of the Pacers?
I mean, in theory, his skill set represents pretty much everything that they're missing. Like, if Tyrese is getting trapped, they could definitely use a big that can make plays out of the middle of the floor, be a canny short roll passer. That would be a boon for them. Having somebody with that much size for a position at the 4 spot, very helpful. Going into the pre-draft process, I was most impressed by him guarding the corners and what his off-ball defensive instincts were. And I think in part, I might have missed the mark slightly there just because of what Houston's defensive scheme was. They were a very aggressive trapping scheme that called for him to have to be more proactive. So while he does make good reads, that's very different than what the Pacers do. And I was talking about them staying home on 3-point shooters. What they do with the low man is a lot more restraint. So I think that's had to be an adjustment. And I know the fan base gets very frustrated with the fact that Jarace isn't playing, but a lot of what he does defensively is about his hands for reasons both good and bad. He has very deft, quick hands. He cat-like reflexes, good hand-eye coordination, but it's more so that than it is about necessarily his mobility on switches on the perimeter as well. So when you watch him in the G League, I know Rick was asked, like, why isn't he playing? And he was basically like, I need him to cut out the willy-nilly gambles. So even in the fourth quarter when he was playing against Minnesota, like, he'll shoot a passing lane, or sometimes somebody might be bringing the ball up the floor, and instead of getting back, he like wants to hound the ball and he might lunge for it. And then it compromises the defense. So he breaks from scheme on that end of the floor quite a bit. And there's just, he's a rookie. He's 20 years old. The Pacers want to win games. Tyrese has been very vocal about, what did you learn from Team USA? And he was like, my big takeaway is I'm tired of losing. So it's just a little bit, of a difference in timeline in terms of where they are and what they're waiting to see. But I do think that when you watch his G League minutes, that you can see improvements from him. Like going into Summer League in the beginning of the season, he was definitely drifting, like he was getting hit by a gust of wind to his left when he's shooting. And now he's shooting the heck out of the ball in the G League, which the closeouts will be different at the NBA level, but you can see he's a lot more straight up and down. So I think that he can be a big part of it. His archetype represents what you see at the 4 spot being necessary in the playoffs, I think, a lot of the time. But how long that's going to take before he gets there, because he's not there yet. So very interesting that got reported this week that they're, very, very determined not to trade him in deals for Siakam, who, if you did trade for Siakam, would be, starting in front of Jarris for 4 years. So that's a little bit curious for me.
Well, Caitlin, thank you for answering all of our questions about the Pacers, but it is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, our weekly trivia show where Andrew goes head to head with an NBA beat writer, or in this case, Caitlin Cooper from the Basketball She Wrote blog on Patreon, where you can read all about the Pacers for only $3 a month. Now, Caitlin, how this works, I've come up with 8 questions about the Pacers. Some are easy, some are hard. You'll give me a number between 1 and 8 and correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and we'll go back and forth until all the questions have been asked and answered. So what number between 1 and 8 would you like to start with?
Let's go with number 7.
Question number 7. There are 4 active NBA players who are in the top 10 for three-pointers made in Pacers franchise history. 2 of them are currently on the team, Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Who are the other 2? And you get 1 point per correct answer.
That are top 10 in Pacers franchise history and made threes.
And they are active players. And I told you 2 are currently on the team, suggesting that the other 2 are not. But they are still on the top 10 list for the Pacers.
Wow. So I'm trying to think of guys who would have been recently made a lot of threes, but would have had to play for the Pacers long enough. My gut inclination is Doug McDermott, but is it Doug McDermott?
Caitlin? That is incorrect.
Oh, wow.
Andrew, you have a chance to steal. That does sound right, though. How long did Doug McDermott play for the
Well, that's what I was just thinking. I'm trying to get in my head how many seasons he played, but he shot the ball really well for them, so I thought it was going to be enough.
He played 3 seasons.
Yeah.
For the Pacers. Andrew?
Paul George?
That is correct for 1 point.
Well, gee, going with an all-star caliber player probably would have been a lot better play.
Any guesses on the other one, Andrew?
Golly. I just have no clue.
Well, now I'm questioning, is it Bojan Bogdanovic?
No. The reason I asked this... No. The reason I asked this question is because I figured Paul George would be like, you'd eventually get that. But then number 10, franchise history, three-pointers made, Justin Holiday.
Oh, and I even love Justin. I should have thought of
Justin Holiday. Dude,
Yeah,
I would have sat here all day. There would have been no way. I would have never gotten to Justin Holiday. Wow.
I'm shocked that Justin Holiday made more threes for the Pacers than Bojan Bogdanovic did, but I guess he was on the team longer.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah, he must have been on there a while. Andrew, the board is yours.
Number 1.
Question number 1. Let's see what we got here. Okay, 2 weeks ago, Tyrese Halliburton had 2 consecutive 20-20 games. 20 points, 20 assists. He is now one of 8 active players who have scored at least 20 points and at least 20 assists in a game. And we're going to name the other 7 active players who have a 20-20 game in their career. So how this will work, Andrew will give me a name, then Caitlin will give me a name. We'll go back and forth till one of you stumbles. So Andrew, a player active who has had a 20-20 game in their career.
Russell Westbrook.
That is correct. Caitlin.
That was going to be my first guess, but I'll go with James Harden.
James Harden is correct. Back to Andrew.
Say, he paused a little bit too long on that.
No, I was getting nervous.
James Harden didn't do it. Boy, those are the 2 easy ones, I feel like. I'm sure that LeBron James.
LeBron James. Andrew, that is incorrect.
Seriously?
LeBron has not done it.
LeBron hasn't done it.
Seriously. He
Wow.
hasn't done it, Andrew.
Whoa.
Now the other names, Caitlin, you want to throw out a name just for fun? Any other names you were thinking?
Oh, I have several guesses. Like, do I get a
Oh,
point
okay.
for every one that I can get right here?
You don't, but it would be very impressive if you got all the rest of the list.
I think it's Luca. I think it's Chris Paul.
Yes.
I think it's Trey
Yes.
Young. I think it's
Yes.
It's Chris. Did I say Chris Paul?
Yeah, you said Chris Paul, Luca, and Trey. All correct. There are 2 names left, and they are the hardest names, I will say.
I know that there's a really random one. I don't know if he would have had 20 points, but I do remember that Fred VanVleet had 20 assists.
Yes! Fred VanVleet is one of them. Do you remember the last one, which is also a very random one?
Another player that would have had 20 assists in a game. No, I can't think of another guy. Who else
The
would
other
have had
name.
20 assists in a game?
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson had a 2020 game?
Apparently. That's what
Reggie.
StatHad said. I did not
Wow.
double check, but
Wow.
all right. It was tied 1-1.
SPG. Man, I feel like an idiot now. By the way.
That makes up for Doug McDermott for me. And the fact that I didn't name Paul George.
All right, Caitlin, what number would you like next?
Well, let's do number 5.
Question number 5. Okay. What is Daniel Tice's career high in points for a game? Now you get to choose who answers first. So you can make Andrew answer first, and then you can go higher or lower. Or you can answer first, and then Andrew will go higher and lower. But if you make Andrew answer first and he gets it exactly correct, he would get a bonus point. So something to think about. So Daniel Tice's career high in points for a single game.
I think the likelihood of either of us knowing that on the button is next to nothing, so I'll make him guess.
All right, Andrew. You're a big Tice head.
Matthijsman. 23. I don't know.
23. Okay, so Andrew sets the bar at 23. Caitlin, would you like to go higher or lower than 23?
Trying to think of if he would have ever had like a big game or maybe other people were out. I'll go higher because I feel like you're asking this for a reason. Like there's going to be some outlier game that he like exploded for.
Yeah, that 50-point game that we all forgot. Well, Andrew, you were within 2 of the correct answer. The correct answer was 25 points, which means Caitlin wins the 2 points.
Who was
So
he
now
playing for when he got
3-1.
it?
God. Points.
Who was it?
Nice.
Would it have been it was against the Timberwolves, and he was playing for
Team Germany.
it was in 20 yeah. It was 2020. So who was he on in 2020? Oh, Boston. He was
Yeah.
on.
Wow.
Okay, Andrew. Board is yours.
This is not good. Number 2.
Number 2. Here we go, Andrew. Which of the following is not a Basketball Reference official nickname for one of the Indiana Pacers?
Okay.
I'm going to read you 5 nicknames. 4 of them appear on Basketball Reference. 1 does not.
Okay.
And they are Samurai Miles, Cowboy Bruce, Eggs, Logs, and McClutchell. Once again, that is Samurai Miles, Cowboy Bruce, Eggs, Logs, and McClutchell. And to be clear, Eggs and Logs, 2 separate nicknames there. I know I said them close together. It's not Eggs, Logs. It's Eggs and Logs, 2 separate nicknames. And McClutchell. Which of those is fake, Andrew?
I kind of lean toward eggs and logs, but I don't know which one to go to. Eggs and logs.
I'm jealous of this question because I actually know it.
Ugh. God, I gotta get it now. I have to figure out which one I want to lean toward on eggs and logs. Oh boy, who would be eggs and who would be log? I'm gonna go eggs.
Andrew, that is correct. That is not a real
Yes.
nickname for Benedict Mathurin.
Okay.
Though I was looking for fake nicknames for him, and a lot of people had egg-themed nicknames, so that's why I included.
Yeah,
eggs.
that would make sense.
Trying to throw you off. Okay, the score is tied. 4 questions left. Caitlin, you have control of the board.
Let's do number 4.
Question number 4. Miles Turner is averaging 1.4 threes per game and 2 blocks per game. If he averages at least 1.5 threes and 1.5 blocks per game for the season, it would be the 4th time he's done that in his career. There are 3 NBA players in history who have already had at least 4 seasons averaging 1.5 threes and 1.5 blocks per game. Who are they? And you get 1 point per correct answer. So these are players. They could be active, they could be not, but they had to have had at least 4 seasons where they averaged at least 1.5 threes and at least 1.5 blocks per game.
Oh. I have 2 guesses of 2 active players that might have done it.
Okay.
I'm going to say Al Horford.
Al Horford is incorrect. Andrew, it is your turn. You could potentially steal 3 points here, Andrew.
Did Manute
Let's
Bol
get-
do it?
Manute Bol, no, Manute Bol did not do it. Why was that your guess?
I don't know.
Can I guess my other person?
Yes,
My other person was going to be Brooke Lopez.
Brooke Lopez has done it,
Oh,
Yeah.
and the other 2 are active players.
The other 2 are
Any
active
guesses?
players.
is it?
Yeah,
Has Embiid done it?
Embiid has not.
Okay.
One plays for the Celtics.
And it wasn't Al Horford?
No, it's Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis has done it, and then Triple J. Triple J.
Triple J.
Oh, okay.
It feels like he hasn't been in the league long enough to do it 4 times.
I
but
wouldn't have gotten to him.
Yeah, that's the thing that threw me off. Is four times is a lot.
It is a lot. Andrew, do you want to know how many career threes Manute Bol had?
No.
43.
Why did I think
43.
that? Why did I think that? Maybe I'm
Not
mixing him up with somebody else in my brain.
Bol, perhaps?
No.
'Cause he shoots threes.
I'm
Okay,
not-
Andrew, scores tied. 3 questions left.
God, that feels really wrong for the score to be tied, to be honest. Number 3.
Number 3, Tyrese Halliburton is the Pacers' leading scorer while attempting only 16.9 shots per game.
Hmm.
There are only 6 teams whose leading scorer attempts fewer than 16.9 shots per game. You have to name 4 to get all 2 points, but you get a half point for each correct guess.
Boy. Okay.
So you can get some half points here. Even if you just get one.
16.9 shots.
Yeah, so you're looking for teams whose leading scorer takes fewer than 16.9 shots.
I need to think of these in my head and then unleash them all at once.
No,
because-
you can just do one at a time because you're going to get a half point per guess.
Oh, I do get a half point. Okay.
Yeah.
Chicago.
That is correct for a half point. Can you make it a full point?
Oh, I'm trying to make it a full point here. I'm trying to think of teams that don't rely on one player very much.
Smart strategy.
16.9. What about Houston?
That is correct. You now have a full point, Andrew. Can you get the other 2? There's actually 4 more. You just have to get 2 of them.
What about Utah?
Utah is correct, Andrew. Another half point. Can you get
Okay.
1 of the final 3 to get all 2 points?
What about the terrible team I saw last night, the Portland Trailblazers?
Oh, you missed that one, Andrew. So you currently have 4.5
Simons?
points.
Is it Simons?
Yeah, it is Simons. Caitlin, you can steal a half point if you can name one of the other 3 teams.
I'm trying to think of teams that have multiple guys who score in double figures. 'Cause I think the Pacers might have the most players that score in double figures. Miami has pretty balanced scoring. Charlotte, I think, has several people.
Charlotte was another one I thought.
I'm going to guess Charlotte.
That is incorrect. It must be LaMelo, I'm assuming.
LaMelo. Yeah, I
Taking
guess.
that many.
Yeah.
Let's see how many he's taking. He is taking 19.9. Yeah. The other teams are Toronto, San Antonio Spurs,
Okay.
and this one surprised me, but it's true. New Orleans. I kind of forgot that Zion's only taking 14.7 shots. per game.
Yeah, that throws you off a little bit. And Ingram too.
And BI is below it as well.
Yeah, that's wild that BI's below that. Huh.
Okay, so now the score is an annoying 4.5 to 3. So it definitely won't end in a tie. So Caitlin, you either can pick 6 or 8.
Let's do number 8.
All right. If Obi Toppin continues on his current pace, he will record more than 100 dunks this season, which is the first time a Pacer has done that in over a decade.
Wow.
Who was the last Pacer to have at least 100 dunks in a season?
Yeah, this is a wild stat because a few years ago, when they had Isaiah Jackson played 500 minutes and he had more dunks in those 500 minutes than the prior two Pacer teams combined. Like they don't have a lot of high flying dunkers. So when I went through those alley oops, I mean that was just alley oop dunks. So I'm trying to think of who would have popped in the last since 2013 and would have had 100 dunks.
And to be clear, I said this is the first time a Pacer has done that in over a decade.
Oh, so before 2013.
Yeah. So whoever it is has to be before 2013.
Oh, I was thinking of somebody, but I guess I'm trying to think of the year he was drafted. Huh.
They have a lot of people who have competed in dunk contests as well.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go with an outlier. I mean, I don't know if he would have played enough minutes though. Like Gerald Green is in my head.
Was he on the Pacers when he was in the dunk contest?
No, he was.
Was
He was with the Celtics when he won.
Yeah.
You're questioning me about whether he was on the dunk contest with the Pacers leads me to think that is the wrong answer.
Gosh, who would this be? I mean, I have another guess, but it seems too obvious.
I mean, it seems like it's going to have to be a big who played regular minutes that's before this time. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like I should just be answering an all-star because of the silliness of not saying Paul George instead of Doug McDermott earlier. So I'm just going to say Rick Smits.
Rick Smits. Did he ever have 100 dunks? He may have.
I mean, his nickname's the Duncan Dutchman. If this isn't right, then come on.
It's true.
Well, it may be right, but somebody has done it since Rick Smits. So, Andrew, you have a chance to steal here. Who's the name you're thinking of?
I was thinking of Jermaine O'Neal, but I just don't. I feel it's too obvious. Jermaine O'Neal.
Andrew, that is correct. It
Yeah,
was
that's right.
Jermaine O'Neal. All right. Final question. Andrew, you get first stab at it. According to Cleaning the Glass, when this Pacer is on the court, Indiana's defense holds opponents to 7.6 fewer points per 100 possessions than when he is off the court, which is best on the team. Who is that Pacer?
TJ McConnell.
No. Caitlin.
It's Andrew Nemhard.
Also, no.
Yes, it is.
It's not. I'm on Clean the Glass. Let me double check.
Like a week ago, it was Andrew Nemhard.
Well, things have changed, Caitlin, in a week. Let me see here. What did I say? Oh, yeah. On and off.
You haven't said yet.
Oh, you know what?
What?
No. Where did I get this answer from? Now I'm looking and I can't even find it. I had Aaron Neesmith, but I actually can't find that anywhere on Cleaning the Glass. So you know what? Caitlin was so confident that I'm just going to give her the point. Unfortunately, Andrew, you still won with 6.5 points to 4. A thrilling conclusion. Congratulations on your half point. Caitlin, thank you for playing.
And thanks for losing again. I think this is my second loss, so this is looking real good for me. I'm jealous that you got the eggs question.
I did get the eggs question. Could have gone either way. Could have gone with logs. Who knows? Hey, go read Caitlin's blog, Basketball She Wrote, on patreon.com. Caitlin, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we go?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. People can head on over there. I'd be happy to have them. There's free options. There's a $3 option. And if you're really generous, there's a $5 option as well.
Yeah.
Can I just give a quick update? I did find my mistake. Caitlin was absolutely correct. It is Andrew Nemhard.
Wow.
I did my eye tracking across the row incorrectly because Aaron Neesmith's right below him.
And
That
I
was-
was
Congratulations.
nervous about that too because I gave it away. Like when we were answering questions, I said
Yeah, you
Andrew
did.
Nembhard's the most complete defender and
The
has the
most
most.
well-
well-rounded defender. I should have said that. I don't know why I thought TJ McConnell is just a hard
You said it so confidently too.
But what I loved is that Caitlin so confidently said, "No, it's not. No, it's not wrong." That was awesome. Go check out Caitlin. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks again, guys.
All right, Andrew, that was Pacers week. And that means we're going to spin the wheel again for the Wheel of Fandom.
Whose star are we going to injure this week?
Yeah, seriously. It's been a bad, rough
It's
couple
been
weeks for the
So
Wheel.
weird. It's been really bizarre the past couple weeks.
So there's 21 teams left,
Mm-hmm.
including all of the teams that currently have a -10 or worse net rating.
Wow.
Washington, Charlotte, San Antonio, and Detroit. Obviously.
Yeah, we talked a few weeks ago how 3 was unusual. Now we're to 4 and like close to 5.
We're close to 5 because Portland's at -9.5. Very
It is.
exciting.
It's a great year for just terrible basketball teams.
Great year. Okay, so let's spin the wheel, see who we get. Can we avoid one of those teams? All right. Whoa, geez, so close. But it is going to be the Milwaukee Bucks.
The
For the
Milwaukee Bucks.
Milwaukee
Wow.
Bucks.
Wrap Giannis up and bubble wrap everybody because the wheel has chosen the
Yeah,
Bucks.
seriously. Let's see. Who are the Bucks going to play?
Hey, they
this
just
week?
smashed the Celtics, who were
They did.
cowardly on a second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I felt bad for Bucks fans when they just went away from the game
You
because that
just,
was
like,
the only
cut it
way.
off. I don't love that move because if you're a Bucks fan, you're like, yeah, I want to watch them just pummel this other team. The
Like I
TNT
get it, but
Yeah, TNT did that earlier this season. You and I were actually at the game together, which is a rare occurrence. But it was Thunder Spurs. They just
they went away from that game.
yeah, they went away from that game. I don't like that move.
Oh.
Like just play the blowout for the fans of the other team. Come on now.
We got some good games. Okay, on Saturday at
Mhm.
home, NBA TV playing Golden State.
Oh,
Who's crisis mode right now. Maybe
Yeah.
Draymond's back. Let's see.
oh,
Then back to back at home the next night to play the Kings, our Wheel
Okay.
Fandom team from 2 weeks ago.
that's a fun
And
one.
then Wednesday night, ESPN game. Will they go away from this one at Cleveland? Will Darius Garland be back? Perhaps. I don't
maybe.
know.
Cleveland's been good.
He's
That's
close.
that's
He's
a good.
close.
That's a good one. I like that one.
And we're just missing their next 2 games after that, next Saturday and Monday, both at Detroit, 2 in a row. So we're missing that
Whew. Lucky
Whew.
for us.
by the skin of our teeth.
Hey, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we will read it on the show, just like this one. This is, I guess, this is reoccurring, Al. That this is left by Coasters Rafting. Hey guys, I'm back. Spring is coming near in Wisconsin, and with that come raging trips down the mighty Peshtigo River. Book your
Ooh.
spring adventure with Coasters Rapid Rafts and use the promo code SLAMAJAM, SLAMA JAM. Don't get fired, Andrew. You can come here. You can come for free. I read this to my kids. My kids really want to go to
Yeah?
the Raging Rapids in Wisconsin.
Do you think that's a real
I
promo
looked
code?
it up. It's a real thing. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's an unofficial sponsor.
It's an unofficial sponsor of Slam and Jam if you want to go.
Wow.
Uh,
River rafting. How nice.
it's 15-hour drive for me to northern Wisconsin.
Now they said recurring. They've left that same comment previously.
Yeah, I've seen it before.
Are they having to use different accounts just to do this? 'Cause
I
You
don't
can't
know.
leave multiple reviews for a single pod, right?
I don't know. But you can go rafting in Wisconsin with.
Maybe we do a live pod out there. Live
We should
pod
do a live pod
from the rapids.
from the rapids.
Electronics and water go together so well.
I would love to do it. That'd be great. And then Malik Monk won. I wonder if this is Malik Monk. You think Malik Monk
That'd be really cool.
listening
Just
during
picked him up
this
on
week?
my fantasy team. That'd be very cool.
He said, "Great podcast. Love listening to it. Can't wait for each episode every week." So thank you so much for that
Thank
review. Al, it's gonna be an interesting week. We've got the trade deadline approaching. We've got to watch the Milwaukee Bucks. It's gonna be great. Hope you all enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys again next week.